When a woman ignores you, most men make the mistake of panicking, overthinking, or chasing desperately. But what if I told you that her silence is louder than her words, and that the way you respond in those moments could decide whether she loses respect for you or feels drawn closer? Ignoring you doesn't always mean she has stopped caring. It often means she's testing, observing, or even protecting her own emotions. And if you understand the psychology behind her silence, you'll realize that it means much more than you think. Silence is one of the most powerful forms of communication that often goes unnoticed because people are conditioned to listen to words, not pauses, not distance, and not withdrawal. When a woman chooses silence, she is not simply being absent. She is speaking in a way that forces you to look deeper than the surface. Her silence can mean hurt, it can mean anger, it can mean she is testing your awareness, or it can mean she is protecting her energy because words may fail her or may feel wasted on someone who does not understand. This is why silence should never be taken as nothingness. It is an active state of expression where she is telling you something far greater than she might with sentences. Her silence carries emotions that are too heavy to be explained, and it becomes a mirror reflecting how much you are willing to pay attention without being told directly. If you ignore her silence, you miss the deeper message. But if you lean into it and observe with patience, you will understand the unspoken truth of what she feels. When silence replaces conversations, it is rarely accidental. A woman knows that withholding her words has the ability to shift dynamics. She knows that the absence of her voice will be felt more strongly than any lecture or argument could deliver. In her quietness, there is often a storm brewing, but not necessarily against you. It may be within her own heart. She might be choosing not to express frustration because she wants to see if you are emotionally intelligent enough to notice her withdrawal. She may be communicating disappointment without verbal confrontation. She may even be protecting herself from vulnerability by avoiding words that would expose the depth of her emotions. Every layer of her silence tells a story, and only those who are aware enough will listen to what is not being said. Silence also becomes a test of your strength and patience. Many men, when faced with silence, react with insecurity. They either demand answers, beg for attention, or panic in the void of words. But a woman's silence is often designed to see how you hold yourself in those moments. Do you maintain your composure, showing that you are grounded and confident? Or do you break down, showing that your stability depends entirely on her constant validation? She uses silence as a way to measure if you can withstand uncertainty without losing your sense of self. Because in her silence, she is watching not your words, but your energy, your response, your ability to remain calm when you don't have control. This test speaks more to her need for emotional safety than anything else, because she wants to know if your presence is strong enough to hold steady when she steps back. At the same time, silence is not always punishment. Sometimes it is a shield. A woman who feels deeply may retreat into silence not because she wants to push you away, but because she needs space to gather herself. Her silence could be a boundary, protecting her heart from saying things she does not mean, from revealing wounds that are not yet healed, or from giving more of herself when she feels unappreciated. Her silence becomes her way of conserving emotional energy, because constant giving without acknowledgement is draining. In these moments, silence is self-care. And if you misinterpret it as rejection, you risk overlooking the quiet strength it takes for her to step back rather than explode with words that would only create damage. There is also an element of mystery in her silence. Words explain, define, and clarify, but silence leaves room for thought, for imagination, for reflection. When a woman falls silent, she forces you to sit with yourself, to think about what is missing, what you might have overlooked, and what her withdrawal might mean. This mystery is intentional because women understand the power of absence. The human mind often gives more weight to what is withheld than what is freely given. So her silence leaves you unsettled, curious, and reflective, making you wonder what lies beneath it. In that curiosity, she holds power because she knows silence creates a space where you must prove your ability to understand without being spoon-fed. Silence also speaks to timing. There are moments when no words can capture what she feels, and silence becomes her only truth. It can represent grief, longing, or even love that cannot be expressed without being diminished by language. Sometimes silence is sacred because it is raw emotion that cannot be put into sentences. A woman's silence in these moments is not avoidance, but depth. It is her way of saying that her feelings exist in a place beyond vocabulary. The irony is that in her silence, she is speaking the loudest because her quiet presence shifts the atmosphere in a way that demands acknowledgement. Silence communicates what is too profound for words, and it reveals what is hidden beneath the surface of ordinary expression. Ultimately, silence is never just silence. It is communication in its purest form because it strips away the noise and forces you to pay attention to subtleties, to energy, to emotional currents that run beneath the obvious. A woman's silence can be love, pain, disappointment, or protection, but it is always something. The true mistake is in dismissing it as emptiness. To understand her silence is to understand her heart, because only those who listen without words will ever be able to grasp the message she is delivering through quietness. Testing your emotional strength is one of the most subtle yet powerful ways a woman evaluates the depth of your character. It is rarely done through direct questioning or confrontation. Instead, it unfolds in moments of silence, in the pauses of attention, in the way she withholds affection, or in the way she creates distance to see how you respond. Emotional strength is not about how loud you can be, how much you can assert dominance, or how quickly you can react to challenges. It is about how steady you remain when situations are uncertain, when emotions are charged, and when outcomes are unpredictable. A woman is drawn to a man whose composure cannot be broken easily, whose presence does not shake under the weight of pressure, and whose responses reflect maturity rather than instability. When she tests your emotional strength, she is not trying to destroy you, but to uncover whether you are truly the type of man who can be trusted with her vulnerability. One of the most common ways emotional strength is tested is through how you handle rejection, criticism, or resistance. A woman knows that if she gives you everything without challenge, she will never see how deep your patience runs. So she may create moments where she tells you no, not because she wants to hurt you, but because she wants to see if you respect her boundaries without resentment. She may express disappointment to see if you become defensive or if you can listen calmly and take accountability. She may pull back her affection to see if you can remain confident in yourself without needing constant reassurance. These moments are not about games. They are about discovering the core of your masculinity. If your emotions crumble under small tests, she knows that bigger storms in life will break you completely. But if you stand firm, respectful, and collected, she begins to see you as someone who is capable of carrying not only his own weight, but also offering stability to those around him. Emotional strength also shows in how you respond to provocation. Life is filled with misunderstandings, disagreements, and moments where frustration rises. But a man who has control over his emotions does not let anger dictate his actions. When a woman tests this, she may push your patience with words or attitudes to see if you react explosively or if you have the discipline to remain calm and assertive without losing control. To her, this restraint is not weakness but strength, because it shows that you are not a slave to your emotions. A man who can regulate himself even when tempted to react creates an atmosphere of safety around him. He is not unpredictable, not reckless, and not fragile. His calmness communicates to her that he can be trusted to handle real challenges, not just minor conflicts. This ability to remain composed becomes magnetic because it proves that he has mastered himself, and in mastering himself, he shows the capacity to lead with wisdom. Another layer of testing emotional strength comes in how you deal with her silence or withdrawal. When she pulls away, it is not always because she has lost interest. Sometimes it is to see if you have the patience to wait, to respect her space without suffocating her with demands, or to trust her without spiraling into insecurity. Men who lack emotional strength tend to panic when faced with silence, overanalyzing, overreacting, or begging for reassurance. But men who are grounded understand that silence is not an enemy. It is part of the rhythm of relationships. They know that their value does not diminish because of temporary distance, and they are capable of maintaining emotional stability even when they do not have immediate answers. This is a strength that women admire deeply because it demonstrates security and trust, two qualities that are rare and highly respected. Emotional strength is also tested through the way you handle vulnerability, both hers and your own. She may open up to you about her fears, past wounds, or insecurities to see if you dismiss them, judge them, or belittle them. The way you respond in those moments shows her whether you are strong enough to hold her heart with care. At the same time, she watches how you deal with your own struggles. Do you lash out when stressed, or do you channel that energy into something constructive? Do you collapse under pressure, or do you remain steady in adversity? Strength is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. A man who can feel deeply yet not be ruled by those feelings demonstrates the kind of depth that commands respect. A woman feels safe with such a man not because he never feels pain or fear, but because he has the strength to endure it without letting it control his actions. At its core, testing your emotional strength is her way of seeking assurance that she is investing in someone who will not falter when life becomes challenging. She wants to know if you are dependable, if you can handle conflict without destroying trust, if you can remain calm in the midst of chaos, and if you can respect her individuality without falling into insecurity. Each silent test, each moment of distance, each boundary she enforces is a mirror reflecting your own stability back at you. It is less about her pushing you away and more about her searching for evidence that you are the kind of man who is not easily shaken, who can protect, provide, and lead not only through words, but through an unshakable presence that speaks louder than any emotional outburst ever could. A mirror of her inner conflict is often reflected in the way she behaves toward you, and yet most men fail to recognize it. A woman may act distant, inconsistent, or unpredictable, and at the surface it seems like she is confused about you, but what she is truly revealing is her own battle with herself. Human behavior is rarely as simple as attraction or rejection. It is layered with emotions, memories, fears, and beliefs shaped by her past. When a woman gives mixed signals, when she pulls you close one moment and pushes you away the next, what you are witnessing is not just indecision about you, but the echoes of her unresolved struggles playing out in real time. You become the mirror where her doubts, insecurities, and suppressed emotions are projected. Understanding this truth requires emotional awareness, because when you mistake her conflict for a lack of interest, you react defensively. But when you recognize it as her inner turmoil, you see it for what it is, a test of your steadiness in the face of her storm. Her inner conflict often stems from past wounds that she has not fully healed. It may be the betrayal of someone she trusted, the absence of safety in her childhood, or the heartbreak of a love that taught her to guard her vulnerability. When she meets someone who stirs deep emotions within her, those wounds resurface. Suddenly, she feels the pull of attraction, but alongside it comes the fear of being hurt again. This is why she may appear distant even when her eyes reveal longing, or why she may argue with you even when her heart wants closeness. You are not just dealing with the woman in front of you, you are encountering all the memories and scars she carries with her. Every smile you give her, every silence you hold, and every reaction you show becomes a reflection in the mirror she is holding up to herself. Her actions are rarely about you alone. They are about the battle she wages between desire and fear, between hope and caution, between opening her heart and protecting it. This mirror of conflict also reveals itself in the way she tests boundaries. On one hand, she craves closeness and intimacy, but on the other, she fears losing herself or being taken for granted. She may withdraw to see if you chase, not because she wants to play games, but because she wants to know if your presence is consistent. She may resist your efforts of care, not because she doesn't need them, but because accepting them would mean lowering her guard. She may even provoke arguments or challenge your patience, not because she seeks drama, but because deep down she wants proof that you can handle the turbulence of her emotions without abandoning her. Each of these behaviors reflects the duality within her, the part of her that longs to trust and the part of her that is terrified too. The mirror she holds to you is really showing her whether her fears are justified or whether she can finally rest in the safety of your strength. When you recognize that her reactions are often rooted in her inner conflict, you stop taking everything personally. Instead of viewing her withdrawal as rejection, you begin to see it as a protective instinct. Instead of interpreting her anger as lack of respect, you see it as a cry for reassurance. Instead of assuming her silence means disinterest, you understand that sometimes silence is the only way she can process her emotions. This shift in perspective is what separates men who fail from those who rise. Most men react defensively when faced with conflict, either by withdrawing themselves or by lashing out. But a man who has emotional depth responds with patience, awareness, and calm presence. He does not try to solve her conflict for her, nor does he collapse under the weight of it. He simply becomes steady enough for her to see, through him, that her fears do not have to define her reality. The mirror of her inner conflict is also about how she sees her own worth. Many women struggle with questions of value, whether they are enough, whether they are truly lovable, whether their past makes them unworthy of loyalty. When you enter her life, you do not erase those questions, you amplify them. If she feels insecure, your strength will both attract her and intimidate her. If she feels unworthy of love, your consistency may cause her to doubt why you stay. If she has been conditioned to expect abandonment, your patience may confuse her. You unknowingly trigger the unresolved dialogues within her, and every move you make becomes a reflection she uses to measure herself. This is why at times her conflict feels personal, as if she is battling with you, but in truth, she is battling with herself through you. At the heart of it all, when you understand that you are a mirror to her inner conflict, you begin to interact differently. You no longer chase her approval because you know her push and pull is not entirely about you. You no longer fear her silence because you know silence is part of her processing. You no longer break under her resistance because you recognize resistance as her shield rather than her rejection. Instead, you remain steady, and in your steadiness, you give her a chance to see beyond her conflict. You allow her to experience the possibility that her fears are not stronger than her desires, that her past does not have to dictate her future, and that trust can exist without constant chaos. And it is through this steady reflection that she slowly learns to confront her inner conflict, not by escaping it, but by facing it with someone strong enough to withstand the storm she carries inside. Attention has always been one of the most powerful currencies in human relationships, and in the dynamic between men and women, it often holds even more weight than words, gifts, or promises. For many women, attention is not just a casual gesture, but a direct reflection of how much value they hold in someone's life. When a man gives his focus, whether it's through consistent communication, eye contact, presence, or simply remembering the details of her world, she interprets it as a measure of importance. To her, the way you distribute your attention reveals exactly where she stands in your priorities, and that becomes the foundation of how she evaluates her worth within the connection. It isn't about grand displays of affection, but about subtle cues that show where your mental and emotional energy truly flows, because where your attention goes, your heart follows. This is why attention carries such depth. It is not easily faked in the long term. A woman can quickly sense when attention is genuine or when it's given out of obligation or strategy. When your attention is scattered, inconsistent, or transactional, she feels that lack of depth and interprets it as disinterest or as a sign that she is replaceable. But when your attention is steady, focused, and intentional, she feels elevated, valued, and chosen. The truth is, attention is energy, and energy cannot be concealed. It flows naturally where desire, respect, and admiration reside. Therefore, every moment you choose to truly notice her, listen to her, and engage with her presence, you are sending the message that she matters, that she holds weight in your life, and that her existence leaves an imprint on your mind. But there is also a paradox that lies within attention. The very thing that makes it powerful is the same thing that can diminish its worth when it is given too freely without discernment. When a man offers his attention to everyone, when his focus is scattered across countless distractions or other women, the attention he gives loses its strength in her eyes. She may crave it, but she also instinctively understands that diluted attention does not equal high value. The attention of a man who is selective, disciplined, and intentional is infinitely more valuable than the attention of someone who seeks validation by giving pieces of it away to everyone. It's the scarcity and weight of his focus that makes it magnetic, because she knows that if he chooses to give it to her, it is a conscious choice, not an automatic habit. This is why attention becomes a test, whether spoken or unspoken. She watches carefully how you spend your time, what consumes your focus, and whether or not you are easily swayed by fleeting distractions. To her, it isn't simply about wanting to be the center of your world, but about wanting to feel that your attention carries standards and integrity. If your focus is scattered, if every small thing can pull you away, she cannot respect your presence. But if your attention is deliberate, reserved for what truly matters, and held with strength, she respects the man behind it. Because the truth is, a woman does not only crave attention, she craves meaningful attention, the kind that carries with it consistency, depth, and intention. And when attention is withheld, it often speaks louder than words. If you suddenly pull your focus away, she notices immediately, because she has grown accustomed to the weight of your energy. Silence, distance, or a shift in where your attention goes can shake her more deeply than direct confrontation. This is why attention becomes not only a measure of value, but also a measure of power. The man who can discipline his attention, who can withhold it when necessary, and who can give it with sincerity when it truly matters, creates a magnetic dynamic that commands respect. Women may not always articulate it, but their response to attention, or the lack of it, reveals just how much they equate it with value and self-worth. At its core, attention is far more than presence. It is presence with intention. It is the act of telling her without words that she is worth noticing, that her essence has weight in your mind, and that she has carved out a space in your world that no one else occupies. To her, your attention is proof of her impact, and when given with discipline and authenticity, it becomes one of the most powerful ways to build trust, connection, and respect. When a woman creates distance, many men rush to fill the silence with desperation, panic, or constant attempts to win her attention back. But what they often fail to understand is that this distance is not always a sign of rejection. Rather, it is a calculated moment. A deliberate pause where she observes you from a place of detachment, not to hurt you, but to measure the depth of your stability and emotional control. Because how a man reacts when a woman withdraws even slightly reveals more about his strength and confidence than anything he could ever say when everything is flowing smoothly. And it is in these spaces of absence that she sees whether your connection was built on genuine energy or merely on your constant pursuit of her presence. And this is why distance is often not a loss, but an unspoken test of value. In truth, women understand human nature far more deeply than they are given credit for. And when she creates distance, she is not just pulling away for the sake of pulling away. She is paying attention to how you carry yourself when she is no longer within reach. She wants to know if her absence shakes you into doubt, if her silence forces you to question your worth, or if you stand grounded, calm, and unmoved by what she does. And that very groundedness is what separates men she respects from men she can easily manipulate. Because when a woman realizes that you do not crumble under her withdrawal, she recognizes a power in you that few possess, a power that does not beg, does not chase, does not collapse in the absence of validation. This distance becomes a mirror for her to examine both you and herself, because when she steps back, she is also observing her own feelings, the pull of her own attachment, and the way her heart responds to your calm presence, even when you are not demanding her attention. And in this process, she begins to recognize that attraction is not fueled by neediness, but by a steady masculine energy that remains consistent regardless of her movements. And it is in those quiet gaps where she realizes that love cannot be forced through constant pursuit, but it flourishes when there is respect for space, balance, and self-control. A man who panics at her distance communicates that his value is tied only to her attention, and this immediately diminishes him in her eyes, because if she can shift your emotions so drastically by simply pulling back, then she holds all the power. And deep down, women do not respect men who are completely controlled by their emotions. What they admire instead is the man who does not lose himself, who does not drown in the storm of temporary withdrawal, but who stays aligned with his purpose, his routine, and his sense of worth, proving silently that he is not defined by her closeness, nor destroyed by her absence. Every moment of distance is like a stage where she watches without words, and in that silence, your every action becomes louder than anything you could say. If you chase, she sees desperation. If you become reactive, she sees weakness. But if you remain centered, she feels a pull that is far stronger than attention-seeking, because now she knows that her presence is something you enjoy, but not something you depend upon. And that realization creates respect, curiosity, and attraction that chasing could never achieve. Women are drawn to strength, But strength is not loudness or arrogance. It is calmness under pressure. It is the ability to remain steady when tested. It is the quiet confidence that says, I am whole even without you. And this is why distance becomes one of the most powerful dynamics in relationships, because it strips away words and exposes truth. It shows whether a man's love is rooted in self-worth or in dependency. And only the former can ever inspire lasting admiration. So when she creates distance, it is not always to push you away. Sometimes it is to see if you are truly unshaken, if you are the man who can handle space without collapsing into fear, if you are the man who can stand firm without demanding reassurance, and if you are the man who understands that closeness is not earned by chasing her back into your arms, but by showing through your calm strength that you are never afraid of losing her in the first place. When a woman ignores you, it is easy to assume that it is a form of rejection, a dismissal of your presence, or an indicator that she does not value you. But in truth, there are times when her silence and withdrawal are not born from rejection at all, but from protection. Protection of her heart, her emotions, and the parts of herself she has learned to guard carefully because of the experiences that shaped her. Many women have endured disappointments, betrayals, and letdowns that taught them to put up walls when something feels uncertain. So when she pulls away, it can often be her way of protecting herself from being hurt again, testing whether her vulnerability will be safe in your presence, and shielding her energy until she can be sure that it won't be wasted. This is where the deeper understanding is needed, because her distance is not always a sign of disinterest, but rather a sign that she values what is happening enough to safeguard her heart before offering it freely. In many cases, ignoring you can be her silent way of processing emotions that she does not yet have the words for. Instead of giving voice to her fears or insecurities, she retreats into silence to sort through them alone. It is not because you are unworthy of an answer, but because she does not want to say something impulsively that she may regret. Women who care deeply are often the ones who withdraw when emotions rise high, because silence feels safer than vulnerability. If she truly did not care, she would not feel the need to shield herself. She would not need to create space. The fact that she takes a step back can mean she is measuring whether her heart is secure in your presence, whether you can handle her complexity, and whether you are steady enough to remain when she does not make it easy. Her silence can also be her way of protecting the bond from unnecessary conflict. Words spoken in haste can do damage, but silence buys time. When she ignores you, it can be her attempt to keep control of her emotions rather than allow anger, disappointment, or fear to speak on her behalf. In this way, ignoring is not rejection, it is restraint. It is an effort to avoid breaking something she values with words that cannot be taken back. A woman who has the maturity to stay silent instead of exploding is not discarding the relationship, but rather ensuring that it does not get poisoned by unprocessed emotions. This is why her withdrawal should not always be seen as a dismissal, but sometimes as a quiet investment in the longevity of what she values. There are also women who have been conditioned by their past to expect disappointment, so they learn to protect themselves before the hurt even arrives. Ignoring you can be a defense mechanism rooted in old wounds rather than a reflection of who you are or how much she cares about you. To her, it is a survival strategy, not a rejection. She distances herself as a way of watching from afar. Can you be consistent? Will you remain steady? And do your actions align with your words? For such a woman, ignoring is not the end, but a test of time. It is her way of giving herself proof that you are safe enough to lower her defenses, that you are different from what she has seen before. Sometimes ignoring is her way of reclaiming her power when she feels vulnerable. Women who have been too available in the past, who have given too much of themselves too quickly, often learn that silence and distance restore balance. By ignoring you, she is not necessarily shutting you out, but reminding herself that her value does not come from constant availability and that her attention is hers to give, not yours to demand. This act of silence is her shield, and behind it, she is protecting the softer, more fragile parts of her heart until she knows they will be safe in your hands. Ultimately, ignoring is not always rejection, but protection. Protection of her emotions, her energy, her peace, and her dignity. It is a silent shield that reveals not disinterest, but the depth of what is at stake for her. Her silence is not always a door closing, but a pause, a moment of reflection, a quiet guard against being broken again. To see it only as rejection is to miss the depth of what she is communicating without words. When she ignores, she is showing you the weight of her heart, the carefulness of her trust, and the reality that love, for her, is not something she gives recklessly, but something she protects until it feels safe enough to be released. When a woman chooses to ignore you, what truly determines the direction of the relationship is not her silence itself, but how you respond to it, because silence is not the end of communication, but a shift in its form. And the man who understands this dynamic holds the power to transform distance into deeper connection rather than into permanent separation. And the way you carry yourself in those moments becomes the blueprint she uses to decide whether you are worthy of her emotional investment or not, because many men in such situations immediately fall into panic, overthinking, and desperate behaviors, chasing for attention, sending multiple messages, demanding explanations, and in the process, they reveal insecurity, lack of composure, and the inability to handle emotional pressure. But the truth is, the very silence she gives you is a silent invitation to show strength, patience, and restraint. And only the man who resists the urge to react impulsively and instead embodies calmness shows her that he cannot be controlled by her absence. Your response is not just about what you say, but also about what you don't say. And this is where many men fail, because they confuse silence with rejection, assuming that ignoring means disinterest. And so they immediately withdraw or shut down emotionally. But the deeper psychology is that when she ignores you, she is often observing whether you spiral into chaos or whether you hold your ground. And in that moment, your restraint is louder than any desperate words you could speak, because a man who is emotionally grounded sends the message that while he values her presence, he is not dependent on her attention to validate himself. And this balance is what earns her respect, because women instinctively test not just what you feel, but how well you control your emotions when things do not go your way. It is also important to understand that your response should not be rooted in ego or anger, because some men, instead of chasing, respond with coldness or hostility, thinking that indifference makes them appear strong. But what it truly reveals is wounded pride. And wounded pride is still weakness in disguise, because it shows that you are not detached. You are simply defensive, and defensiveness is a form of emotional dependency. So the strength she is looking for is not in how quickly you cut her off or retaliate, but in how gracefully you can manage your own emotional state without collapsing into neediness or aggression. And this is the subtle art of masculine composure that few men ever master. Your response in moments of being ignored also dictates whether she sees you as an equal or as someone she can control, because women are instinctively drawn to men who cannot be easily moved or manipulated. And when you remain centered, continuing your life with purpose, maintaining your frame, and showing through your actions that her silence does not derail your inner stability, you send a powerful message that you are a man of value, because value is not measured by